won an extremely historic Canadian Grand Prix that left us all guessing until the end. So the drivers and teams usually arrive at the circuit on Wednesday, but the proper racing doesn't really start until Friday. Friday is the date of the free practice sessions. So the drivers and teams can get to grips with the circuit, get a feel for it, and adjust their car's setup to meet the performance needs and certain characteristics of the circuit. For example, if a circuit had a lot of long straights, teams would probably take off a little bit of the back wing so that it would minimize drag. But if it was the opposite and the circuit had a lot of corners, they put on more front wing for better speed in the corners. So, on Friday practice, the two top teams, Ferrari and Mercedes, were pretty evenly matched through those two practice sessions. But on Saturday, there's a third practice session that takes place in the morning before qualifying. In this session, the teams and drivers usually get prepared for qualifying, so it's more focused on speed. In this session, Ferrari looked to be a little bit faster than Mercedes going into qualifying. So, in qualifying, there are 3 sessions, and the first 2 sessions knock out the slowest 5 or 6 drivers, I think, and only the top 10 fastest drivers can make it to the third part of qualifying. From then on, it's a mad dash for pole position, and whoever gets the quickest lap gets to start first. The quicker lap you get, the higher grid position you'll get. And it's interesting. Nowadays, there's actually a fixed qualifying system. But what's interesting is that when F1 first started in the 1950s, they used to just determine the grid positions randomly. So if you're like a really good driver, your chances of winning the championship could be really hampered by your luck in the draw. So back to the qualifying. So Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton, the 2 championship contenders, were very evenly matched through the first two parts of qualifying. And it was the same story in the third part of qualifying, where most drivers usually do 2 runs, as the session only lasts for 10 minutes, and that's how much time they'll have to do that amount of laps. Those amount of quick laps. So, in their first run, these 2 drivers were extremely evenly matched. The lap times were so close. In fact, Vettel was only 4 1/1000ths of a second slower than Hamilton in their first run. However, in the second one, when the drivers usually try to beat their time in their first qualifying lap, Lewis Hamilton was much quicker. He pulled an amazing lap out of the bag and was 0.3 of a second quicker than Sebastian Vettel. That might not seem like much for someone who's new to F1, but 0.3 of a second is kind of like the difference between night and day in F1 because all of the cars are so close. So, Lewis Hamilton had pole position, and this was significant because he matched Ayrton Senna's total tally of 65 pole positions. Although Michael Schumacher had 68 pole positions, Ayrton Senna was known as the greatest greatest driver in terms of raw pace and qualifying over 1 lap. He was so good that drivers that drove against him would make an extra effort to get out of his way because they didn't want to be the driver that would ruin Senna's lap. Because Hamilton achieved this great feat, he was gifted Senna's 1987 helmet by the Senna family right after qualifying. And Lewis Hamilton said he was humbled by that gift from them. Now back to the race. So Hamilton was on pole position. Sebastian Vettel was second. Valtteri Bottas, Hamilton's teammate at Mercedes, was third, followed by Kimi Räikkönen, who was fourth, who is Sebastian Vettel's teammate. So it was Mercedes, Ferrari, and then the two Red Bulls of Max Verstappen, the young Dutch driver, and Daniel Ricciardo, the 27-year-old Australian driver. So at the start, all the drivers got a pretty good getaway, but Max Verstappen, the young Dutch driver, got a fantastic one. He had such a good start that he managed to come up to second. However, this affected many people, mostly Sebastian Vettel, because when Verstappen was making his risky but impressive move, he clipped Sebastian Vettel's front wing with his tires. With his tire, he was lucky not to pick up a puncture because the front wing is very sharp and it could put a hole in the tires, which will cause a puncture. So, on the first lap, there was a big accident when Carlos Sainz of Toro Rosso lost control of his car and was going the wrong way was sliding the wrong way into a corner and clipped Felipe Massa's unfortunate Williams. So this was a big crash and resulted in both of the drivers retiring from the race on the first lap. Unlucky for them. This brought out the safety car, which is usually brought out when there's a big accident and the marshals need time and space to safely clean up. So there's usually a slower car that slows down all the Formula One cars into a slow line, and you're not allowed to overtake or go very fast during a safety car, otherwise you'll be penalized heavily. What Ferrari and Vettel didn't know they had no clue that his front wing was damaged until the safety car ended, and then a bit of his wing fell off. And if they had let him stay out, he would have went very slow because the performance wouldn't be good, and it might damage the car further. This was significant because if Ferrari would have pitted under the safety car, they would have gotten basically a free pit stop because the cars were going very slow, so he wouldn't lose as much time as he would if he pitted under a green flag. But Ferrari and Vettel only noticed this once they started racing again. So he had to pit, and he was dropped down to 18th place. So this is when the recovery began. So Ferrari planned to put him on the super soft tires. During the race, there was 3 compounds: the soft, the super soft, and the ultra soft tires. The soft tire is the slowest tire, but it's more durable than the other 2 faster tires. So the thinking behind Ferrari's strategy was that Ferrari could put on the super soft tire and hopefully Vettel could manage his tires and stay on them until the end, so he wouldn't have to do another pit stop. That way, he'd be able to do one less pit stop than all of the other drivers, and hopefully he'd be able to gain positions. But he'd have to be fighting them off in the end. He managed to make up several, I think a dozen places, and he was up to 6th. But then on lap 49, Ferrari decided that they wanted to take him in, and they put him on the very fast ultra soft tires. At this point, Hamilton was comfortably leading. Behind him was his teammate Valtteri Bottas, followed by Daniel Ricciardo of Red Bull, because he was promoted to 3rd after Verstappen sadly retired with a battery issue in his car. After that great start, he probably would have gotten a podium, sadly for him. So his teammate Ricciardo was 3rd, and the 2 Force Indias, who showed great pace throughout the weekend and are usually a midfield team, were running in 4th and 5th. What made things interesting in that battle for 3rd is that Ricciardo was 3rd, but he wasn't putting in very impressive lap times. In 4th place was Sergio Perez, and behind him, his young teammate Esteban Ocon. Although Perez was ahead of his young French teammate, his teammate was on much fresher ultra soft tires, 13 laps younger in fact. He was on much fresher and faster tires, and he seemed to have a better chance of passing Ricciardo than his teammate that was ahead of him did. So what teams try to do to maximize their opportunity of getting more points is that they swap the two cars around if the two teammates are running in consecutive places. So in this case, they were running fourth and fifth. So they could have switched the fourth and fifth driver and give the fifth place driver a chance at passing him. However, the team wasn't very clear on what they wanted to do, so they didn't really take any action, and Perez just sat there and couldn't really pass Ricardo. So this was significant because the two Ferraris, Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel, were both on the very fast and not durable ultra soft tires, and were charging at them and gaining at a rate of about a second a lap. At that rate, they were going to catch that pack of three with about 6 or 7 laps to go. Vettel had a huge challenge if he wanted to get on the podium because he'd have to make 4 passes. But he was gifted a good opportunity at that when Kimi Räikkönen had braking problems and wasn't able to stop fully for after the long straight into the hard chicane. So he had to go through a certain zone so he wouldn't gain an advantage, and this allowed his teammate to pass him. Räikkönen would later hold on to that 7th place because and he couldn't pass anyone because he suffered even worse brake issues, so he had to nurse the car home, sadly. So Sebastian Vettel, with his golden plated gift basically, kept on charging up to the Force Indias and the solely remaining Red Bull. He finally caught up to them on, I'm pretty sure, lap 63 of 71. He managed to pull off an amazing move on the young French driver by going on the inside into the dirty side where all the marbles are, basically the rubber discarded from the tires are, and this is very dangerous because he was leading the championship, and it was a very risky move because the chance of him crashing in that very slippery zone was very, very high. So this high difficulty move actually worked out. So it took a lot of skill, but he managed to pull off the move. He also passed the second Force India of Sergio Perez with about 3 laps to go into the final corner. But there wasn't enough time to catch the Red Bull of Daniel Ricciardo. There's a lot of controversy after the race because Force India could have possibly gotten a podium if they had switched the 2 drivers around. But the past is the past. Now they can't do anything about it. All they can do is learn about it. So, Hamilton comfortably won the race and led every lap from start to finish. Valtteri Bottas, his Mercedes teammate, was second, and this meant that they got their first 1-2 finish of the season. This is very good for F1 because Mercedes always used to do that last year because they were so dominant. But it's nice to know that F1 is this close this year. Ricciardo was third, clinching his 3rd podium in 3 races, an impressive sequence for him, and Vettel made a fantastic recovery, coming from 18th to 4th. The 2 Force Indias were 4th and 5th, although these were good points. I'm sure some of the people on the team must have been disappointed with this because they know that they could have done better had they switched the drivers around. Kimi Räikkönen nursed his car home in 7th. Nico Hülkenberg of Renault had impressive points in 8th, and even better, Canadian driver Lance Stroll, the rookie this year, he's been struggling, but he got his first points in F1 in Canada. Isn't that nice to score points at your first home race? Another piece of history. After his 9th place finish, Lance Stroll clinched 2 points. He was the first Canadian driver not named Villeneuve as a last name to score points in Formula 1. So congratulations to the 18-year-old who's in his first year of F1. So I hope you enjoyed my recap and you learned a lot about F1. Bye. If you enjoyed this video or learned a lot about F1, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, Kids Love F1, if you want to watch more exciting videos about this great sport. Not getting enough of F1 fun? Well, visit my blog, kidslovef1.com, by clicking on that young F1 fan on the left. I hope you enjoyed this video and you'll check out my blog later. Thanks for watching. Bye.